Okay, part 2 of Lee Harvey Oswald. I keep thinking his first name is Oswald because my father-in-law's name is Oswald. And my husband and my daughter Christina are on the plane going to Norway to visit him and to celebrate his 99th birthday. This is coming up in March, but they're only going to stay a week. So anyway, so Lee, hi, Eric. Hi, Abby. How are you?
Good. He says, hi, Mom. He's showing me this image of him on a plane. And you know that song, Drunk on a Plane? It's a country song. No. It's by Dirk Bentley. He's like totally partying. Yeah. He's like partying on the plane. He's got a drink in his hand and he's walking up and down the aisles. He actually has a cowboy hat on today. Oh. Never seen him in a cowboy hat before.
Oh, he's got a whole, you know, he had this cowboy shirt that he and Papa always used to have this inside joke, Mr. Pearl Snaps, because it's a brum. Oh, I can't. Mr. Pearl Snaps. But yeah, he's and Eric was always an
excellent. Eric says, easy, Mom. You don't need to take your shirt off.
Yeah, well, I don't want to horrify.
And he goes, my family knows how to party.
That's true. And Eric was really an amazing equestrian. I homeschooled the kids for a while. And one thing we did for PE was horseback riding lessons, English, Eastern. And he was like 5 years old. And the rest of the 2 girls were older, of course. And the guy, Sky, said, your daughters don't have a lick of talent, but that boy does. So that's funny. Okay, well, we need to get to Lee. I'm so sorry. Got distracted. All right, so
yeah, Eric, you're getting us off course here.
No, it's me. Like 101. All right, Lee Harvey Oswald, thank you for coming back.
He says, thank you, Mrs. Medhus. I'm very happy to be here. Of course, I'd rather talk about other things other than what I'm known by dying from.
Yeah, I know. All right, well, let's see if we can help you with that. These are community members of the community questions. Going back several years, did you ever have the idea you would do this particular crime, this murder? If not, when did you realize you were, well, let's just start out with that.
Today, he's presenting himself much more casual to me. He's got a white t-shirt on with jeans. The bottom of the jeans are kind of rolled up a little bit. He's not wearing sneakers. They're actually like dress shoes with the jeans. Okay. He's starting with like leaning on his knees and he's kind of scratching his chin. Uh-huh. And I'm sorry, he totally just distracted me. Eric was just distracted.
Okay, going back several years, did you ever have the idea you would do this particular murder?
He says, absolutely not.
Okay.
He said, but, well, I had a good idea that the government wanted something to do with me after a short time. I guess there was an incident when he was in the military that must have happened. It was something that got flubbed up, some kind of mission, something was happening, got flubbed up in some kind of way. It didn't happen quite how they wanted it to go. And so when he came back, he knew he was on the hot seat. Oh. It wasn't his fault that whatever mission they were on failed, or
but somebody had also against him? They used that against you?
Yes. They used that as leverage.
Oh boy.
So he said they really put it to him. Ugh. They really put it to him. They didn't give him, there was no choice, he felt. He said that he really ultimately had to protect his family because he felt like the family was in danger. The community could be in danger. He said he was very much so misrepresented. So
you were a patsy, basically.
Yes.
Oh. Was George de Morin Schilt your CIA handler?
Did he what?
Was George de Morin Schilt your CIA handler?
So there were people above him. He was actually, in some instances, trying to negotiate for Oswald and trying to convince Oswald, like trying to talk to him into it, like, look, buddy, my hands are tied, like, let's get you out of this. He said he actually appreciates him for his actions with just trying to be honest and trying to be fair, but he could only do so much because it was people
Higher
in the
up.
government that already made these calls and already made these decisions.
Or was he playing the good cop, bad cop thing?
Yeah, like I see him in a room, and there's a water on the table, and Lee is sitting at the table, well, like he's sitting right now with his arms like back of his head, just kind of his legs out straight, just trying to not let it get to him. There was some kind of interrogation, some kind of huge, like, kind of like you see in Law and Order, or like SVU or something, where they're like really sticking it to him and yelling at him and trying to scare him, and okay, well, there's a way out to this. And then like all of a sudden all these big suits walk in. And then it was explained to him exactly that it's his civic duty as a United States citizen and as representation of the United States of America to protect our democracy and to protect the government and to protect all of its people. And that's where it all began. That's when the plot was laid out to him. And he says he felt like it was unfair. And he was in real shock. He says he was in quite the dilemma because, I mean, what was he gonna do? He says, I was a little fish in the big pond at that moment. He says, go to jail for the rest of my life, lose my integrity and my family. He says, lose more than that. He says, because these people, they could kill me. They were threatening my life.
Family.
But at that point, he wasn't caring and concerned so much of his life. I'm not sure. Do you know if he had little daughters?
I have no idea.
Okay. I don't know if he had kids, but he was thinking about his children and what legacy, they kept trying to spin it to him that he was helping our country. It was his duty.
All right. Was it really a coincidence that Ruth Payne, Payne, got you that job at the book depository, or was this just part of the assassination plot?
They paid her off.
Okay, so it was part of the plot?
It was a unlikely coincidence that turned into the plot. It was a forthcoming of events to come. It was a coincidence, but it
was a coincidence to give the job, or did they say, hey, give this person a job to her?
A little bit of both.
How can that be, Erik or Lee?
So he actually had some interest in the job. He had some interest in the job, and apparently it was a coincidence that I don't know if he applied first for it.
Okay.
But she like gave him the job, not knowing that the roles that it would play. It seems like some information was leaked to her. Some information unfolded to her. I don't know if it was by Oswald or by the government, but somehow some information got leaked to her. And she was paid off to not say anything. And so she didn't know the ins and outs of exactly what was going to happen. But she sure struggled with that, after the fact.
Imagine. Oh my God.
She had
Officer Tippit, Tippit, involved in the plot, or was he just in the wrong place at the wrong time? Never heard of this guy.
I have no idea who he is. Let's see. He was aware that something was going to happen. So I'm seeing like an image right now that I'm pretty sure I saw in a history book somewhere of Oswald, like right when he was getting shot.
Yeah,
And
but
was he one of the police officers that was standing there? Because he's showing me an image.
maybe,
Okay.
maybe.
Okay. So he was aware, they were all aware. There were huge threats that day.
Let me look it up while
And
you.
something about, like, I don't know if they changed the route or if they were looking into changing the route, but something to do with that. So he knew, and they all knew, that the threat was imminent he's using.
Okay.
And he was aware that anything could happen at any moment, but he's also making it clear that that's his job. He
Okay.
says, they tell me to protect somebody, I'm going to try and protect them. He says, you know, that's the job of a police officer. You don't know what your shift is going to be like that day or what you're going to go into.
Oh, here, J.D. Tippit was shot and killed while questioning the assassin of President John F. Kennedy at 10th and Patton. So, wow.
So was he a police officer too?
Yeah, American police officer.
Okay.
J.D. was an American police officer who served 11 years as an 11-year veteran of the Dallas Police Department. About 45 minutes after the assassination of United States President John F. Kennedy, Tippit was shot and killed in a residential neighborhood in the Oak Cliff section of Dallas, Texas.
Wow.
Yeah. Wait, Lee Harvey Oswald was initially arrested for the murder of Tippit and was subsequently arrested for killing Kennedy. Oswald was killed by Jack Ruby 2 days later. So, wow. So, who really killed Tippit? It's weird.
I'm picking up also, again, it was government. I'm getting the sense that they were thinking about changing the route. There were conversations about changing the route. He was very innocent to, obviously, like so many people, because there was such a small circle that knew about this.
Because 15 minutes after Kennedy was shot, Tippit received a radio order to drive to the central Oak Cliff area as a part of a concentration of police around the center of the city. At 12:54, Tippit radioed that he had moved as directed, so the route changed. By then, several messages had been broadcast describing a suspect in the shooting of Dealey Plaza as a slender white male, blah, 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 blah. Oswald was slender, okay. At approximately whatever time, Tippit was driving slowly eastward on East 10th Street, blah, 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 when he pulled alongside a man who resembled the police description. Oswald walked over to Tippit's car and exchanged words with him through an open vent window. Tippit opened his car door, and as Tippit walked toward the front of the car, Oswald drew his handgun and fired 5 shots in rapid succession. 3 bullets hit Tippit in the chest, another in the temple. Okay, pronounced dead, blah, blah. So, did you kill Tippit? Or was this like the government?
No, he did. It was, again, it was setting Lee up. It was part of the bigger picture.
God.
It was all part of the bigger plot. It was part of the bigger plan. He says, as I mentioned before, I didn't say I haven't killed anybody.
Oh, yeah.
He did kill Kennedy.
That's true. All right. Were you able to see your own funeral after you were murdered? And tell us how you felt, even though you were in spirit, that your funeral was only attended by your widow, your mother, and your brother. Wow.
So he's admittedly saying, he says, oh, when I was out of here, I was done. I wasn't hanging around.
Oh, yeah. So you did
get me out of here.
So
he says,
didn't see your funeral.
He was with his wife and with his children. Okay. And he was trying the best he could to comfort them, and in saying that he was trying to tell them you know, because he was in spirit body and they couldn't quite
Right.
hear him. So he was trying to give them messages, just different messages that give him clues that he was okay and that they were safe now, that
Oh,
everybody was safe. It was the end of a journey, he says. He says it
wow.
was the end of the era. When he crossed over, he says it wasn't exactly white picket fences everywhere and roses. He says there was some retribution for my actions because of judgments I had towards myself with my actions, even though they were lethally enforced.
Wow.
And one of the people that met him first was actually that police officer that he killed. And then when he was
Oh, wow.
overseas, there was also another man that was killed. I don't know if it was whatever flubbed up operation that was happening over there, and that's how Lee even got involved with all this.
Wow.
He was there, and the police officer put out a hand to him. All of a sudden he was laying on the concrete. He's showing me like a highway in the middle of nowhere, going all the way straight and going all the way back for miles and miles, not flat land. And he's laying on the ground, and all of a sudden his eyes opened and he was panting and breathing heavy. And he all of a sudden, when it stopped being so fuzzy and blurry, he says he realized there was a man standing over me with a blue shirt, brown pants, and he had his hand outreached to grab his hand to help him stand up. And of course his first reaction was absolutely terrified. What just happened?
Yeah.
And because time doesn't exist in heaven, there was quite a few experiences in a while he had to talk with these men, to talk with his angels. He says his mama came through.
Yeah.
I don't know if his mother was passed at that time, but either his mom or somebody on his mother's side, like mother or grandmother, somebody like that coming through right after they did, to show comfort and solidarity.
Guy with the blue shirt and brown pants.
He was really very traumatized.
Oh.
Very, very traumatized. And that's something nobody could understand.
Yeah. Who was the guy with the blue shirt, brown pants? Was that Tippett?
That was Tippett.
Oh, okay. What about John F. Kennedy? Did you meet him? Eventually, I guess.
Eventually, when he had his life review and it got to the moment of death, Kennedy was standing in a large field with beautiful high like wheatgrass up to his knees, and he had his hands just folded in front of him, just holding his hands together, and he had a huge smile. And that was the first thing that he really noticed, was his smile, and how his hair was still perfectly coiffed, and he was just as handsome as he's always ever been.
Yeah.
Kennedy stepping back into this again.
Wow.
Hello, Mr. President.
Hello.
That's so weird. Hello, Mr. President.
All right. So what was your life review like?
He says, it gives you the impact. It's like reading an impact statement, the facts. It gives you the facts without the emotion out of it for him. Yeah, the emotion was taken out of it. So you read it like a fact sheet. You know, that's how it was presented to him. And when he read it like a fact sheet, you know, it just read what exactly had transpired in his life. And then he would look up as if looking into a large mirror, and he was able to get like a 360. He's showing me like a cube view of then the emotions when he looked at the person in the image. When he looked up, he was able to translate their thought processes and their emotions as he was reading these fact sheets. So nobody was necessarily judging him. You really do judge yourself. Like, this is your mission. This is your duty. And as he read through it, it's not like somebody was standing there with like a scroll, like, gee, you probably shouldn't have taken that piece of candy.
No, of course not.
You know?
Yes.
You know, it wasn't like that. It was very much, he says, wow, he says that was a real go around for me to see every decision that I made. And some of them were, he says, as you kids would call it, cringeworthy.
Oh yeah. All right, well,
I think
so
he's hyphenating it because he probably didn't talk that way back in his time.
probably not. So in your life review, did you figure out what you were here to learn and what you were here to teach, like, and also what your spiritual mission was?
So he had a real sense of peace. Even after he kind of came to and things were blurry, it was like he was terrified, but he also had this real feeling like everything's going to be okay.
Okay.
And things are in its place like how they're supposed to be.
Mm.
And he didn't know where that was coming from, this sense of, because he had been feeling such dread and such stress and such anxiety for months, before this. And it was enough to make him crazy, to make him mad. He says he was seeing things, which now in hindsight, it was experiences with spirit that he was actually having before he even passed. And it's not that they were telling him not to do it. They were telling him that everything was going to be okay.
Okay.
And he didn't know how. That's what made him mad. That's what made him feel crazy. And he spent time crying in his wife's lap, and she had no idea why. It was a lot. It was a lot on him. So at some point soon after the crossing over and the realization hit him, he had a real sense, he says, of actual pride. Like, hey, I got through this lifetime.
Yeah. All right.
And,
Well, so what were you here to learn and teach? Like, what was your spiritual mission? Just tell me, let's talk about that. Took us down a rabbit hole there, but it was fascinating.
It's kind of like what we were just saying about, hey, I got through this lifetime.
Okay.
Maybe what man says is the judgment of murder. He says, and Erik says, yes, it's not a popular concept, but a death is a death is a death. It's not a popular concept, and it's a very humanistic, but he was meant to play this role. This was what he was supposed to do. And Kennedy is nodding.
Well, why?
He's not saying anything.
Why was he supposed to do this, play this role?
Evolution is what I just heard. Evolution. Things could not change. Things could not evolve in the way that was best for the collective to learn from, without tragedy, without chaos and tragedy. There can't be evolution from it all. He says, look at even the vehicles that the president drives in now, because this happened.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, to me, it's really unfair, because it's like, why did it have to go that way?
Yeah. But what was the greater lesson for the collective?
A lot. There was a lot of lessons. It wasn't just one lesson.
Right.
And you can't pinpoint it to one lesson, because there was lessons for the little girl watching this unfold before her eyes when she was only 6 years old. There was lessons for, now, my mother, I think, was in the 3rd grade when this happened. And she says she remembers coming home on lunch break.
Everybody remembers. Everybody was alive.
How it affected the whole family, units, every family, every household. He says, thank you, Mr. President. He says, you ain't seen nothing like it in your decade, sweetheart.
Yeah. Well, so what was the lesson? I know how they reacted, how it was impactful, but what was the purpose? What was the lesson for the collective?
One of it was to promote the understanding that even though the United States of America is based off of the thoughts of freedom and liberty, we're not in control. We're not in control like we think we are. We're not in control like we want to be.
Oh, yeah.
We're not in control politically. And does that make us a democracy? And should we fight for our freedoms? And this is coming from John F. Kennedy.
Oh, wow.
He's saying this right now.
Wow. You were court-martialed after you accidentally shot yourself in the elbow with an unauthorized 22 caliber handgun. Why did you do that?
He kind of says, "Oh, I was just fucking around."
Okay.
But then
All right.
I'm seeing an image of it happening, and he wasn't so much fucking around. He was actually, he contemplated suicide a lot
Oh, wow.
before any of this went down. When it all started unfolding to him from that very first meeting that he described at the beginning, he contemplated suicide regularly. He would sit at the end of his bed with the barrel in his mouth, with the gun cocked and ready to go.
Oh,
But then the thoughts of his children would creep into his mind and his devastated wife, and that would stop him every single time. He says, I was a bit of a pussy when it came to doing himself in, but he was having a very hard time, and one time he accidentally shot himself.
oh, yeah. Okay. So it wasn't just effing around. Okay. So how do you see things playing out here from your perspective? I'm not sure what that means.
I have to say what he's really saying.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, okay. He's saying we're all fucked.
Oh, okay. Why?
I'm gonna get a lot of backlash for that one.
Nah, okay. I never read the
Well,
comments.
it's because we, as a society, we're not celebrating not just the democracy, but we're not being like to our separate parties how it's meant to be. He says we're all delusional. We all got our own ideas about stuff. He goes, you got the left and you got the right, and they're all arguing, and they always have. It's been that way in a matter of history.
Yeah.
But he says you have to understand it's up to you to take control of your own rights and how you're being regulated and how you're being treated. And you do have that right to vote.
Yeah.
And that is something that they really can't take away from you. And they try and regulate it, and they try and whatever to it. But as far as the modern day society goes, he says all you people are delusional.
All right. So are you saying that one of the things, the reason for this happening was to sort of shed light on the deep state controlling us?
Very much so.
So the deep
Very
state,
and
is the
there's
deep state
been
responsible
and
for
there's
all
been
this?
other things. There's been other things as well, since then, he says, that have happened to try and control our state of thinking, our state of being. He says, look at your just goddamn TV sets in your living rooms you're all looking at. There you go.
Yeah. So
He's calling it mind control.
we're deluded because the deep state is affecting us, and including the media and all that. Is that what
He's elaborating on that they're thinking, and Kennedy's just sitting there. He's not saying nothing either way. I don't even want to look at him right now. But he's very abruptly adamant that we're all being brainwashed, and
yeah.
I'm just bringing messages through people. That's what I do. Translator.
Yeah, I know. I agree. The Big Brother, the deep state is trying to brainwash us, and
he's even bringing up your cell phones, how they can control you on your cell phones.
Yeah,
they can see where you're going. He says, don't you think it's ironic that you were just at a rib joint last night, and then the next day all these new ads come up on your Facebook there, he says, for
crazy.
He's got that real Southern accent. I'm like feeling it right now. The Texan accent. And yeah.
Go ahead.
It's just like he's showing me the restaurants, or like you go to your gyms there. He says, and then all of a sudden a new yoga studio pops up on your ads. He goes, and how would they know that? How do they know?
Yeah, I know.
He says, especially with all y'all COVID-19.
I know. Hey, what good came out of the assassination of JFK?
Anything. Kennedy and Oswald just kind of looked at each other and smiled. And Kennedy, okay, Mr. President, Kennedy is picking it up right now.
Okay.
He wants to talk.
Thank you.
Okay, so he's saying that it really was brought forward that the government has its way when they want to have their way. So as much as it was a cover up, it's kind of funny how everybody knows about it. You know, and everybody's talking, and they talked immediately. I mean, I don't know if this is true or not. Maybe you'd remember, but I guess they started talking immediately, and it was also like another foul up, you know, that they messed this up, because now everybody's talking about it, and they're supposed to be the most secret society of government officials that they're supposed to cover this up. And so people aren't chattering at all, and they didn't enough. They didn't. He goes, they sure as hell didn't enough. Okay. He says society as a whole needed this. He says they needed it to affect their homes, their families. Yeah. We needed it as a nation. We needed it for humanity and for the world.
To what end goal?
What can happen to a free society of people who come together for the greater good, but then lose their ideology about what this country was founded on and what it's supposed to all be about.
Right.
Okay. So apparently he liked Reagan. Okay. Because he's bringing up the Reagan administration.
The president?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. President Kennedy is bringing up the Reagan administration and how much he admires that man.
Okay.
Because that administration had it all, had a true understanding, the wit of of humanity in the United States of America, of where our plans were going, of where we should be as a society, and what was best for the greater good of people. And he continues to say that to me was the last best presidency that tried to maintain order and control in the most optimalistic way that was best for the people and had heart. He says, because it's all about your heart right here. He says, you'll feel what's good and what's not good in your heart.
Well, I feel like the Democrat Party has lost its way. I mean, long gone are the JFK, moderates, the Democrats that really cared about the working people, etc. So what message do you have for the Democrat Party now? Your party.
He's saying he's sorry. He's sorry that it went this way, that it was controlled this way. And if you don't mind, I'm asking him a question, because I was brought up extremely Republican. I'm not anymore. I'm very mutual. I see things how they are. I'm not left. I'm not right. I'm not extremist.
Me neither. Yeah.
Very neutral. But I'm asking him, also the right-wing Republicans, how are they almost not so far off the real left-wing Democrats in their own ways, because they're just as destructive.
Exactly.
And he's saying
things are not good. Yeah.
He's saying that's absolutely right. He's agreeing with me entirely. And he's saying, even, to this day, but way back when with the KKK, and you get some real extremist parties that just like to hurt people because that's just what they like to do.
The Southern Democrats were the party of KKK. So what advice do you have for the Democrat Party now? And for the Republican Party, whatever. But we can start with just this is your party, so we'll only ask that.
He's saying hold tight, because there's more coming. There's more coming of bad decisions. But he wants to make it clear that he's as the president of the United States of America, he's still looking out for his people. He still believes in the greater good of the United States of America and of its citizens to make the better choices. So he holds out hope.
This is I guess we're turning into, but just before we go on, because we still have some questions that I want to get through. What party would you, knowing the Democrat Party now, the Republican Party now, Libertarian, et cetera, what party would you assign yourself to now?
He says, I'm an individual.
Independent?
Remain an individual. Mhm.
Uh,
He doesn't want to be assigned to either party.
yeah,
He,
me neither. I'm not registered with it either. All right, did you and JFK leave? Did you have a spiritual agreement for this to take place? Did y'all plan this, design this as like a soul contract together?
yeah, this was a soul contract.
Okay.
This was very much so a soul contract. They went into this knowing not just that, but other little things in their life, you know, that led up to this event. It was like when Oswald was a little boy, some events that happened with other little kids, and it's almost like he knew at the very end, he knew why so many things in his past had happened to kind of
lead
get
up
him ready for this event.
Wow. Yeah, they said you had some, psychiatric disease, personality derangement, passive aggressive, schizoaffective disorder. I can't remember. Did you have some sort of mental illness?
He's got his arms on his knees again, and he's leading forward, and he goes, makes for a great story now, doesn't it? He says it makes it believable that I am not a man, but I'm an animal.
Oh. So did you
So
have
it was part of the labeling process.
was this just the powers that be labeling you that so they can say, well, see, that's why he, killed Clinton. Is that
He wants to reverse the question on you.
okay?
He said, what would you do, ma'am, if a group of suits came in and dragged you out of your home and put you in this small room for hours and hours and beat the hell out of you? He says, and threaten your life, your family's life, anybody, your dog's life, anybody that cared about anything you cared about, and they didn't give you a choice and you had to, and you were so, he says, you were so tied either way. What would you do? You
had some fishy stuff apparently going on as a child and teenager that sort of seemed like, I'm trying to look for it.
He's saying that's what made me fit into the criteria. He says that was part of the app. If you want to like think of filling out a job application, that's what made it so fitting that he was to be the one chosen to be a part of this situation in history.
Well, I mean, when you were 12, your mom took you to New York City, where y'all lived for a short time with Oswald, with your half brother John, and Oswald and his mother were later asked to leave after an argument in which Oswald allegedly struck his mother and threatened John's wife with a pocket knife. That's when you were 12. In 7th grade, you were offered a truant, which led to a psychiatric assessment at the juvenile reformatory. And the psychiatrist there described you as immersed in a vivid fantasy life, turning around the topics of omnipotence and power, through which you tried to compensate for your present shortcomings and frustrations. And so he concluded that you should have the diagnosis as personality pattern disturbance with schizoid features and passive aggressive tendency. Lee has to be seen as an emotionally quite disturbed, this is the quotes of the psychiatrist, youngster who suffers under the impact of really existing emotional isolation and deprivation, lack of affection, absence of family life, and a rejection by a self-involved and conflicted mother. So what do you say to that?
He says, that might make me a screwed up person, but it doesn't make me want to kill somebody.
So did you have a DSM, whatever? Did you have a psychiatrist? Were you truly psychiatric? Did you have some sort of psychiatric diagnosis? Or were you just like, oh, a bad mom and whatever?
He did have diagnoses, but that doesn't mean that he was.
But that wasn't the cause of you doing.
But that wasn't, he actually, so I can't get this out of my head. I keep hearing whistling, like somebody's whistling,
Okay.
whistling a tune. And I keep seeing this man standing in his room, lighting a cigarette in the room, in this dark room. And he's leaning against the wall with his shoulder. And Lee is sitting in his bed, this little scared little boy, seeing this being in his room constantly.
Yeah.
So he was having all these experiences that they were labeling as him having all these psychosis issues. When all in actuality, what it was it was a mirror image of himself, his future self as an
Oh,
adult,
wow.
coming to him visiting him when he was a little boy.
Wow.
And he says he didn't say anything, but he would stand there and he would look at me and he would watch me and he would smoke his cigarette and just lean against that corner and that wall. And I would try and tell people, but the more I told people, he says, the more trouble I just got in. And it was very real to me. And once he learned that it was actually, he wasn't making it up, after he had crossed over, he had forgotten about it for a while. And then right before the assassination attempt, he was seeing him, because that's what he's calling it. He's calling it an assassination attempt. That's what he's aiming at for himself. He was seeing him again, and he hadn't seen him since he was a little boy. And those times in the room where his bedroom, he would sit at the end of his bed with like the dresser in front of him in the mirror, and he'd put the gun to his ear. He put the gun in his mouth, like, just kind of crying and just wanting to end it all. And he would see him in that room with him.
Why did you want to kill yourself?
Because he felt like he had no way out of it. He had no way out.
Out of the plot?
Yeah, out of the plot.
Okay.
He had no way out of it. He felt like he didn't, they had people trying to convince him. Oh God, they tried to convince him in 30 different ways, sideways, why it was the better option and what he's doing and how he's going to get out of it. And but he just knew that there was no getting out of it. He was their scapegoat. He was to take the fall. They had set him up, and this is how it was going to be.
Okay.
And then they played out this role with him throughout the situation, and he had to do what they told him. And it was awful. He felt very much like a prisoner, and he knew that even after the assassination, if he didn't do it, there was still no way out. There was no way out.
He's trapped. All right. So how does your higher self view your relationship with Dr. Mary Sherman? I have no idea who that is.
He's saying she was a nice lady.
Okay. Well, what do you think about your mother? Tell me about your mother. Sorry.
His mom also had a lot of issues. She had a lot of actual like mental issues that made it so she wasn't able to be the kind of mother that you read in storybooks, he says. It was very confusing for him because there were times where she would be so sweet and so sweet, and he'd have the mother that he always dreamed for a minute, and then it would be gone. And those periods of being gone started to go longer and longer. I don't know if he got put into foster care or something, but I'm seeing him like getting shipped out of there, being with different people. So maybe they just had their kids stay with different people or something, but it just, it wasn't the greatest. Yeah.
Who this Dr. Mary Sherman, but while I'm kind of looking, what was Jack Ruby part of the plot? I mean, by the government to kill you so you can divulge. I mean, why did Jack Ruby kill you? What was behind all that?
I was asking him that and he wouldn't say anything. And so let's try this again.
Okay.
I was asking him it after the last session we did.
Oh yeah, right.
Because I just wanted to know,
Right.
Let's see if he opens up now. Okay. So he's saying, again, there's things that you don't know that are happening even when you think you're part of the plot and you're part of the plan, and they're trying to convince you that they know you. Okay. I don't feel like he was hired by them. I don't feel like he was exactly a part of he's saying a deranged fan.
Oh, a deranged fan of JFK? Maybe, or
He's just saying deranged fan.
okay.
But he was imperative to the story. It was a sole contract thing before the story. They would have most likely gotten rid of him either way.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah,
But
right. I bet.
it just kind of, for their benefit, all fell together like it did
Yeah.
to make me be killed. So it was a coincidence, and it wasn't planned.
Okay.
But it did, and the higher beings that were in charge of this whole plot were like, oh, thank God.
Oh my God. Oh my God. I got 3 more questions. One is, any regrets?
I regret not being there for my wife.
Oh, all right. Second, have you reincarnated, or do you plan? If not, do you plan to soon?
Okay. Yes, he has been reincarnated, but he's already back home,
Oh wow.
and he plans on reincarnating again. And this time it has to do with politics. He's going to be, it's weird because it's like, it's playing out right now, but then it's like in the future. So I don't know how to
Okay. Oh
describe it
wow.
because I'm only human,
Mm.
but it's like playing out right now politically, but then it's in the future. Yeah, I don't know how to describe that right now,
Well,
but
can you share a life that most influenced your one as Lee Harvey Oswald? That Wikipedia is way
okay.
too long. I keep looking at it. It's like it's too much. All right, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm seeing this like ballerina dancing around right now. And so I'm asking him if he was in a past life a ballerina or a dancer.
A Russian ballerina, since you like
He's
that.
he's not giving me words, but I'm seeing this ballerina dancing around, and he's showing me how he tiptoed through life. He's tiptoed through life. And it turned out to be a comfortable state of being for his future lives. And
ballerina then? And
he'd like to get off that train.
what?
Like get off. He tiptoed around his whole life this lifetime, and he had a past lifetime that it wasn't in this country, but it was overseas, like I don't know, in Europe or something. I don't feel like he was a ballerina. Okay, now I'm getting a clear picture. He was a man sitting and drawing a ballerina as she was dancing. So he was an artist, and he was in France. And the movements, and he's showing me the movements, how life can be so chaotic and so much can be happening. And then you have these beautiful pieces of art, these humans that are art that are so formulated and so precise in their movements and how they move.
Wow.
And how beautiful and sad and moving that can be all at the same time.
Mm.
So, and this affected this lifetime for that same reason. Life can be beautiful, and it can be sad, and it can be moving, and it can be chaotic all at the same time, because he's bringing out the good that this situation brought. The fact that he was a part of it, just humanity coming together, kind of like when Princess Diana died.
Exactly. And the shuttle, all that. Yeah. 9/11.
Yeah. Okay. So he says because of that, he doesn't regret it, and he doesn't regret it because he's on a higher level now. It's a higher
Yeah.
it's a higher condition of understanding, he says. Just like the ballerina, they're in the moment and they're dancing and they're almost in a zone. They're in this tranquil zone, just flowing and moving with the music. And he would always try and translate it on a paper and on an image.
Oh, nice.
And you can't really translate. He did end up in New York, though. He went on a ship to New York.
Were you the artist Degas who drew the ballerinas?
Oh my gosh, that would be amazing, huh?
Yeah. Yes
He's
or
not
no?
giving he's not giving me an answer.
Okay. Just
He's
yes or
not-
no. Erik, was he?
He's saying it's irrelevant.
Okay. Erik, was he?
He worked with Degas.
Oh, okay. All right. Awesome. All right. Abby or Erik, do you have anything else to say? Or Mr. Oswald, do you want to add anything? Because we're closing up shop here.
That he is an American. He is for the people.
Okay.
He wants everybody to know that he is an American. He is for the people, and he does have rights too.
Yeah.
He's not a bad guy. He says that before you judge something, you should take a real good long look at it without anybody influencing you, and really get to know the story behind the people, before you make assumptions,
Right.
or before you vote.
And
Or
that's a big
before you
lesson right
talk.
there too.
Yeah.
Beware of the snakes in the media who try to brainwash people.
Yeah. Yeah.
But no matter what side of the aisle they're promoting. Okay. All right. Good. Thank you, Erik, for bringing Lee Harvey Oswald. Thank you, Lee Harvey Oswald. I'm so honored to have you elucidate some of the misconceptions that surround this story. And thank you, of course, to Abby, Brightside Medium. What would you like to say before we close, Abby? How you can be reached?
Brightsidemedium.com. I also am on Facebook. You can find me on Facebook, Abby Dagnes or Brightside Medium.
Sounds good. Thank you. And you guys subscribe to this channel, please, and hit the notification bell and share. Share with
Erik says, bye, mama.
Bye, I love you.
And he's just kidding, and he's holding up a glass, and he's in the plane partying.
Oh, all right. Thank you, Abby. I love you. I love you, Erik.
Love you, Mom. Bye,
Bye.
Lisa.
Bye,
Take care.